I've been playing about with sculpin patterns now, or bullheads if you like, miller's thumbs, for at least 15 years, and I think I've finally got a really, really nice one. Just to talk about sculpins for a minute, obviously means that you're going to be talking about streamer fishing. And streamer fishing has never ever been popular in this country on rivers. In reservoirs and lakes, yes, but not on rivers. Which surprises me really, because quite frankly, if you want to catch a big trout, streamer fishing is going to get you it. I've had more big fish with streamers than any other method, and I just cannot understand why this country doesn't have streamer fishing as one of the disciplines. And you know, it's not chuck and chance it as some people think, and it's not stripping lures. There's one or two right nifty little techniques in streamer fishing. And if you're going to fish streamers, you're going to need, without a shadow of doubt, some nice sculpin patterns. And we're going to do one for you now. Before we do that though, I'll just show you one or two that I use. Here's now, if you like, the zenith of my affair with sculpins. This is the best pattern I've ever tied from a sculpin point of view, and as you can see, almost all of it is free to articulate, and I call it the waggy tail sculpin. And as you can see, it's tied almost entirely with a soft tanned rabbit skin patch, and then the actual fur on the back is also sculpted so that it doesn't blow away when you stop retrieving, so that it stays flat. This actually does look like a sculpin. Two big pectoral fins and the usual nice big bullhead. You don't really need to put eyes on, I just do because, you know, I fly tire. So that's a brute. That would be the type I'd use, the size I'd use on say American waters, on rivers in the Rockies or in Michigan. I tie that same style down to little babies about that big, and that's been used because the rabbit skin's gone a little bit dry. They go dry when you've packed them away in your box and they dry out, but don't worry about it, because within half a minute of using it again, it's all gone as soft as wet onion skin. So that's the little baby one. The usual size for the dales that I prefer is 2.5 inches long. And the loop in the eye, I fish them on loops, the Veliorti loop, so that they can fully articulate. Now, there's one slight problem with my sculpin design, and that is that the hook, as you can see, the hook is sat well forward, and actually finding the perfect hook to do these is a little bit problematic. I suppose an answer would be on a fly this big to put a stinger hook in the tail, but if I do that, I know I'm going to lose some mobility. My compromise now is to use not a short shank hook but a longer shank hook to bring the bend of the hook somewhere back here, which means a whacking great hook, which takes me to the second point. You have to be sure the fishing rules will allow you to use large hooks. Some places they stipulate a maximum hook size, so it's worth checking on that. However, we're going to assume today that you're under no such restrictions, and I'm going to do a big one this size so that you can see in detail how the fly is, well, I use the word constructed really, because there's very little tying. There's only 2 tying stages, and then the rest is cutting, trimming. So put those away, and we'll make a start. Okay, first job to do is to cut the rabbit pelt. Now, I've got a natural ginger here, a natural tan. You can also use the ordinary wild rabbit colour, but this, when trimmed, will give me the nice sandy coloured background. So all I need to do is put dark bars on. Observe the grain direction of the fur, and lay it on something that you can cut through to. Don't, whatever you do, cut on top of the wife's table. It's all right if it's your fly tying table. And I'm cutting a nice long carrot shape, for want of a better word. Remember, the sculpin up near its head, the bullhead near its head, is quite wide. It's nearly as wide as the head. And also it tapers down almost geometrically, symmetrically, down to the tail. Supporting the skin with your fingers, just go in and make a long straight incision, doing your best surgery bit, and then that's tapered, and then cut a long straight bit. I'll tell you what the straight bit's for in a second. And then, assuming the right width for your sculpin, cut there, taper in as geometrically true as you can to the straight bit, and then cut parallel. And if you've cut it right, it should more or less lift out, and then cut across the top, and that should, now if you've done it right, that should lift out, and then trim it off. Voila, there. So there's your patch already cut. So now what I do now is, with my scissors, I just start sculpting this down, and I'm rounding this off and tapering it down. Imagine a carrot cut in half lengthwise, but only cut down as far as where the strip goes parallel, and just work on this. You see, if I leave this long all this long fur on, whenever there's tension taken off the fly, the hair will blow up, it'll blow back, it'll blow out, and a sculpin in that form looks very, very wrong. Okay, some people say they like to see a fly, hear them talk about a fly that breathes. Well, I don't think these sculpins look natural when they're like that. You will find that you're going to have lots of waste on, lots of junk on the floor. So you're going to have to get the hoover cracking when you're finished. And also, remember, when you clip in, there's no such thing as a putting back on tool. So if you make a bogs of it, you can't do anything with this to recover it. So the clipping part is fairly critical. Now, I can work on that a little bit more, but for now I've got it down as far as I need to. And this tail part, this is going to be the tail, and at the moment the fur's only on one side, and this is why I've made this long parallel cut. What I do now, with some contact adhesive, I put a streak of contact adhesive on here, and then within literally seconds this contact adhesive will be dry. And what I do now is I fold that back, touch down, wet those fibres to stroke them back, get my pliers and give that a good pressing, and even wet it in your mouth and press it down. So what I've done now, I've put some fur fibre, some fur on the underside of the skin, and when that's dry and combed up, I'll have a double lobed tail. Right, that's the body part, almost completed. It'll need a little bit more trimming, which I'll do later. So you get it up to that stage and then it's hooking the vise. And these are the hooks I'm using. And it's a saltwater hook. What I'm trying to find is a hook with not such a long shank but a very, very wide gape. And these up-tied hooks are ideal. So there we are. Nice partridge hook. I use the hook pocket in my waldron so that I don't put undue strain on the tip. And this particular design of mine, if you're not careful, you close the actual tying of the fly reduces the gape size considerably. So I've chosen a hook with a wide gape purposefully. First thing to do is turn up about a good, I don't know, almost half the shank. Turn it up at about 30 degrees. The reason for that is I want the eye of the hook to come out somewhere up on the forehead of the fly, of the sculpin. I don't want it to be on the hook axis, I want it to be high up, because I'm playing about centres of gravity here. If you're not careful with these flies, this design, it flips upside down. I always want it to fish belly side down, back up. It's the belly side that I'm showing to the fish. And of course, crush down the barb. Right, first thing to put on is some lead. But obviously, before that, get your thread on. And before that, I abrade with some coarse wet and dry. I abrade the back half of the shank to give me better grip. I once watched Dave Whitlock tie his famous sculpin, and he actually took a file to the shank. So, fine smear of super glue. Don't want much. Super glue doesn't work if you put a lot on. Moser Power Silk. And make a good secure thread base and touch down with a little bit more super glue. The last thing you want is rotation. And what I do to make this even more secure and add more friction to it, I include at this stage some of the belly colour fur dubbing, which is quite a coarse dubbing, and I just whack that on roughly to give me lead something to grip onto. And more super glue. So now on with the lead, and I'm going to lead this so that the lead is primarily on the underside. What I've got to do now, I've got to make a platform to take this skin. And obviously when I tie it down, the last thing I want is for this pelt to fold in, because if it folds in like that, I've lost my actual body shape. I want to tie it in so that it remains flat. So I've got to build a chassis, if you like, now, virtually as wide as this. So it's going to be wide in that direction, but shallow in this direction. And how I do it is with this lead wire. So take off a length of lead wire. This is not actually lead now, it's, I think it's tin. It's environmentally friendly. Tie this on the underside. Leaving a tag sticking forward like that. And just give that a light press in. Keep that pressing, that flatness going all the time. And now what I do is bring this round, tuck it underneath that lead tag and wind it to the back. So my lead is going on the underside all the time. Come round again on the underside and round again and tie down, pass it under. Bit more super glue. Lash down, pass it under that tag, so I'm building up this, what I call a lozenge shape, and the weight bias is below the centre line of the shank, which is important because that will keep the fly, it will help the fly anyway from rotating and fishing belly side up. See the turns, the wraps just tuck in behind one another. And what I'm trying to produce is this width on this width, and I don't want it to get thick there. Time for a bit more super glue. The reason why I'm really reinforcing this is the wider it gets, the more turning moment I'm going to put on, because it's coming out from the centre now. So I'm going to, if I'm not careful, I'm going to put a torque on it, and the torque may break me away from the actual initial tie down point on the hook shank. Now, because this is tin and not lead, you may think, God, how much more lead is he putting on? Well, this isn't as heavy as lead. This is considerably lighter than lead in my view. If it was lead, I would have to stop. So you can see I've made essentially an oval. And things will want to slip and slide, but don't worry about it. I can trim that off now with the back of my scissors, right at the back. I can trim that starting point off. That tag that I'm cutting off now, that helps enormously to keep these return wraps in place. Fold that tag round, close it in. So, looking in plan view, I've got this oval lozenge, which is, I don't know, it's about 1/4 inch wide. That way it's about barely 1/8 thick. And what you can do now is flatten it with pliers, but be careful because you may break the little grip that the super glue is making. And so if you do nip it with pliers, don't murder it with pressure, just nip it. So now what I do, yet more super glue. I can hear you already saying, oh, he's putting more super glue on. And now I absolutely smother this with this very coarse, sort of dirty yellow dubbing with little highlights in it, little sparkly fibres. And you can whack plenty on and make it look as rough as you like, it doesn't matter. So if you can't dub neatly, you're going to shine with this one. And so already my shape is getting wider and wider, and I can look at this. Yeah, it's coming on nicely. Still more going on. I remember I was at a show in the States a couple of years ago, and Jack Gartside was demonstrating some of his saltwater patterns, and he had some really nice glittery material to do some striper patterns. And I was walking past him and he said, "Hey Ollie, look at this." And he dressed this fly using this material, and I says, "That's nice stuff, Jack, what do you call it?" So he says, "I call this my moron fly." So I said, "Why do you call it moron fly?" So he said, "Because I put more on." Right, that's now my nice flat pancake of dubbing. It's wide and it's narrow that way. And now on goes the skin. And very often, it's not necessary, but very often I just lay on there, just as belt and braces, a little bit of contact adhesive, and just work that into the fur. Lay on your fur, check your overall length of your sculpin now, because I can always cut off the front, you see. If I've cut this too long, I can always do some final trimming. Lay on your fur, look on top, centralise it, press down, and then come round and tie down. And again. And if you're going to tie down and give it some welly, do support this lozenge of lead that you've built up underneath. You don't want now to go even down there and suddenly find it rotate, because if you do that, it's a start again job. And then you can trim off that waist flange of rabbit fur and get rid of it. Now, literally from where my thread is hanging to the eye of the hook is going to be head. It's going to be filled up with the bullhead. And the head is going to merge back and merge into the front part of this fur. So, for the head, I'm using Sculpin wool. Traditionally, people use things like deer hair on sculpins, but if you use deer hair, you're defeating the object of the exercise, I think, because a big, bulky deer hair head, you can float a tanker on it, you know, it'll just bob the fly to the surface. And a few years ago, the Americans realised this and they started tying them with wool heads, and hence the advent of Sculpin wool. When you buy it, I'm going to use this natural creamy colour because I want to match the belly side as near as I can. And of course, I'm going to be using Pantone pens to colour the top side. You can be very clever and use two colours and do stacking techniques, but I'm not very clever and I prefer to use a pen. When you buy this stuff, take it out of the pack and look at it, and you see it comes in. I think the trade call it a rolag, and you'll see that you can literally peel off long lengths like that. So I get my first wadge of Sculpin wool and take off about that much. Let's say 2 inches. Cut through it. And now look on the front of it and just prod your finger in there and make like a, just separate it out like that and make like a funnel. And just bring that funnel, there's your funnel, bring that funnel straight in and make sure it goes over till it's over at least 50-50 of its length. Come round with a soft wrap, close down, and then before you finally pull like hell, open the front out, reveal the eye, and simply sweep all that wool back and then pull hard and come round again. And now drop it onto there and tie down at the front. Tie down, tie down, tie down. And make sure that you've got a good connection there. If the thread slips, don't worry, just keep whacking turns on until it finally grips. And then, oh yes, you've guessed it, right in at the base there. That's a bit of a lifesaver, is touch of super glue there. And then come back to your clump of sculpin wool and take off another good couple of inches. Round it up, break it open, poke your finger in, make the funnel, stuff it straight in. Right, hit the centre of the hook eye like that. Hold it get as many fingers around as you can, circle around. It'll want to slide forward, so now what you do, pull off a bit more thread. You don't murder it with tension there because it's got to go back. So open that front, just do that kind of action. Open that front, hold it like that, stroke that back, bring your thread through and then push back. The old deer hair packing jobby. Your thread's at the front, then murder it with tension. Then wrap on. Wrap, 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 wrap. Super glue. One more and probably one after that, just depends. See what it looks like. And cut off the same amount. Do the old funnel trick again. Push it over. Pull the thread through the wool. Make a rotation. Funnel it back. Hold it back and then pull. Pull the thread through. Pull, pull, pull. You'll always drag a few fibres up, it's unavoidable. And there's probably just enough space for one more turn, one more pack of wool. I nearly said deer hair then. When you say pack, you automatically think of deer hair. And a fairly small one now, so I'll just tease a bit off there. So that's all going quite well. Open that out. Put that on. You might tend to slip off here. Got it. Reveal the hook eye. Pull like hell. Lock down. Believe it or not, that's the end of the tying. Bit of super glue. And do the whip finish. You can close the super glue now, you're done. Until you put the fins in. Okay, well that went well. So now you get your bug rake and you go around and give that a bit of a comb, and use the coarse end, the broad end at first, and make a complete pom-pom of it. Do a bit of back combing, and then that way. And then once you've been round it with the coarse side, you can, a bit of wool dubbing there, look. You can just go careful, don't get any lugs, otherwise you might rip more out than you bargained for. A good sign at this stage is that you're not pulling big clumps out. If you start ripping clumps out, that's a danger signal. That means that somewhere the head is loose. You will obviously get some wool out. You can't avoid that. That's natural. So that's the shape you're after to start with, and underneath I'll just comb a bit at the front forward. Now I'm ready to start trimming, and this is the time-consuming bit, because I've got to now make this sculpin head. You've got to bear in mind that hook eye, you're not going to trim up to that. I'm going to be trimming up to somewhere down there. I want that hook eye to be about a third or even a halfway up its head. So at this stage I turn it over and I swing it in more or less to face myself and start trimming. Working in the centre of the head, I start cutting away, working back down to where I can see the hook bend. And now I've revealed the hook bend, or the hook point should I say. So just plough out this centre track and be mindful of where the hook eye is, and comb to left and right. Just with your scissor point, just push to left and right and make a flat underside. You'll cut down until you come to that wodge of dubbing that we put in, which is exactly what you want to do. And now I can reveal more, so just keep working it left and right like that. Right, having got so much done, you can start to come to the sides, working from the front towards the back, and knock the side shape down now to size. Start reducing it. Turn it just on its side, and I'll just make a front cut which is going to limit the amount I take off the front. I'm just viewing it, lining it up with the eye, and just cutting forward of the eye to give me a front edge to work to. So I don't want to keep flattening the underside. And now you can work up this inverted U, this bullhead shape. And it's starting to come, and just keep feeding off this waist at the back. So just taper that in a little bit. You've got to be mindful of what a sculpin or a bullhead looks like, and the best way is to go and catch some, do some seine netting or dip netting in your local stream. Turn them over and have a look what they're like. And I think at this stage I can turn it round and start knocking down the bolt at the top. Keep doing that. And you can see where my hook eye is. Remember what I said, the hook eye wants to come out somewhere up its head, not down at the bottom there. This also acts something similar to the sloping front face of a diving plug. So now I've done as much as I need to just at the moment. You knock this down in stages. Don't go into it like a bull in a china shop. Just do it in easy stages. I'm now going to trim the back edge of the head, what I call the gill line. So I look underneath, assume where I want my head to finish. What it does, it gives you a distinct head, does this. It cleans all this up. And there'll be some excess on here to trim off. That will be first entry of wool. So I can trim some of this off and reveal the rabbit fur. So it's a question of just going round, taking your time, doing a neat job. You're not going to tie these commercially, of course, but if you want a nice sculpin pattern, this is it. And you might want to use this to devise your own and shortcut the idea. I turn it over, do the same at this side. And make this a curving cut, or a straight up and down cut. And likewise trim away some of this. And now with this on top, I can start to trim this, thin it out, and I might get me comb involved here and just comb through it. Just start thinning this out. Let it blend into the rabbit fur on top. Thin it on the sides. And you're looking now to do sort of all your final trimming and primping. This top part, the fur there, is the wool there, should I say, is going to run into the fur and will be coloured. The reason why I've chosen to do the head in this cream coloured sculpin wool is because I want to keep the underside more or less the same colour as the pelt, the skin of the rabbit. And if you're clever, and I don't profess to be, if you're clever, you could have done a two-coloured head, a bicoloured head. Some Americans do, and you could have been very clever and done some packing of different colours. But I'm going to use marker pens. So now, as you can see, I'm actually trimming this and running the sculpin wool into the rabbit fur so that it just blends in. And I can probably at this stage introduce my 0.5mm comb, and any lumps and bumps in the rabbit fur, you can now do your final trimming. Okay, we're about there with this now. You can spoil it, of course, at literally any stage if you do something stupid with your scissors. So don't make a bogs of it at this stage. You know, trimming this is like a painter, a good watercolorist or an oil painter knows when to stop. And the thing about this is, you should also know when to call it a draw, because you get to a stage where your navel's staring, and what you're doing is you're trimming it for yourself, and it's not going to make any difference at all when you're fishing it if it's slightly uneven down here. And because you get carried away with fly tying competitions, you want to make them all so perfect. So now I just comb out the tail. Remember, I stuck these halves together. So then I stroke it out. When this dries, it'll come out perfectly. But you can see I've got fur top and bottom. So then there's a little bit of fur there stuck to it, which I'll trim off. So then I hold it like that, and I just trim. So there's my tail coming up. I'll round it off. Just cut in there a little bit. Okay. You can leave this quite dense at the back because it does tend to get bashed about a bit and worn off. So if it's not fairly dense, it's soon totally insignificant. Right, next job now is to put the pectoral fins in. I turn it over and I get a needle. I saw this trick of how to put odd appendages on flies many years ago, watching some Americans at a big show, and what they did, they found a thread wrap amongst the dubbing and they pushed a needle through like that, and then I'm using for the pectoral fins this Moser ghost fibre, this coarse ghost fibre, and so I take off a clump of ghost fibre, and to thread it through I do an old trick my mother showed me years ago. Fold it over the needle, slide it off the point, crush it with your fingers, and push it through the eye like that. Now what I'll do is I'll just pull that through. If it goes through with a doubled amount, that's excellent. It's better than I can hope for. Get another needle and find the loose end and pull it through. Now you just line that up, put a touch of super glue, pull it to one side a little bit, put a touch of super glue on what will be the centre position and pull it back in. And then spread the fibres, cut that loop there. You find when you do that, you'll invariably get one side a little bit denser than the other, so you may, if you're so fussy, you may just want to just run the blade through and just trim a few out. Fan them out a little bit. Remember, these small fish, have got huge, great pectoral fins. They look really badly designed in a way. So go around and just clip round there. Just make a couple of large rounded pecks. And just force them back a little bit. Just to lay back and down a little bit. These wave about in the current anyway, so they'll find their own position. That's not bad. So the last job I have to do now is to colour this Sculpin one that I've been using. I want to retain the cream underside because that's the natural colour of the underside of the actual little fish. So I'm now going to colour the top part with this sort of greyish brown marker pen. I'm going to see if I can get plenty into that part where it blends in with the rabbit fur. Nip it together and get it on. I'll colour down, and you tint it all across the gill plates, right down to the belly side. But don't go on the underside. Remember, this has got a completely white or creamy white or yellowy white underside. So just support with my finger there, and make sure the pen doesn't bleed through to the underside as well. So I'm just giving it the sort of background colour, if you like. And there's the gill edge. So support with your thumb or your finger. Your fingers and thumbs, when you do these, they're going to get gunged up with super glue and head cement and Evo stick and God knows what, but it comes off. So just support it there. And you can see now on this shot that the hook eye, the point of connection on your leader, is well up from this front edge, and it's got a nice sloping, what I call a forehead. So I've given it this background colour, and now I can put the barrings on. They're sort of marked irregularly, and the barrings often run at an angle. They're not sort of square across. So put the barrings on now, and I'll run from one side of its head over to there. And I might just put a bit of barring down here. So they're not necessarily symmetrical, aren't bullheads, but the markings go on down the dorsal side of the back. And what you'll find is that this particular all marker pens leave like an inky residue behind, and the temptation is to start combing it up. Well, if you do that, you will remove a lot of the colour. What I tend to do is unless I'm showing them to somebody or they are for show, I tend to leave them like this and take them fishing and let the fibres separate when I'm fishing. But what we'll do with this, we'll just give it a second or two, and then we'll comb it up. A bit more marking around the head. Now, if you want to be ultra fussy, and I know you'll want to be, you can put some barrings on the fins, and you want to get these pens, these Pantones with 3 nibs. So support it with a piece of card and just dot across, so you can put the fin markings on. And then do the other side. There's just a row, just 3 rows of marks. So right, just if you're so fussy, you've done the fins, you might as well do the tail. Just hold them together, and you'll find it will flood out, so you've got to be careful. Turn it round, try to repeat them on the other side. course it floods into natural fibres, but man-made fibres like ghost fibre, you can get nice neat rows. That's alright, that'll come out okay with that. We'll just give it a second or two to dry, and in the meantime I'll stick you a couple of eyes in, because I know you want some eyes to go in, I can just tell. So get your cauterizer and just make a couple of eye recesses in the right place. So you're just burning out 2 little holes to sit the eyes in. Make sure you've got right position. They're sat fairly high up in a sculpin's head. And make them big enough to take one of these peel off eyes. So just burn the hole, burn a little recess. Actually, they look good without putting an eye in, because the eyes on the real thing are actually little black piggy eyes. And then peel off a couple of these little stick-on eyes. Don't put these big optical eyes like doll's eyes. They're too heavy. Put these little flat stick-on things, and then obviously they'll be sealed over with head cement or some other adhesive. That's that one in. And there's this one going in. Go on, get in. I suppose it sets it off and it makes it look good for you with a fly tire, but it's hardly necessary. It's amazing though what eyes do. They suddenly bring anything to life. I'll push it in with a corner of that. So I'll just put a little bit more darkness on that head. You can just, you know what I was saying earlier about a good painter knows when to pack it in. Well, a good sculpin tire knows when to pack it in as well. Well, he should do. Right. I'll risk combing this out. It's been on a minute or two. I'll just see if we can get it combed out and let you see what it's like when it's all fluffed up. It's still a little bit fibres are still tending to stick together a little bit. I use my 0.5mm comb. Yeah, I can feel the comb dragging, so the fibres are still a bit sticking together, a bit wet. But the tail's coming up quite nice. Just comb down the back. See how the comb's dragging? I'm going to tip it, turn it over like that. Well, that's it really. As I said, I could play about with it for ages. I might even think about making this sandy colour a little bit darker, but it needs to really thoroughly dry so that I can comb it through. Because one of the dangers, if you comb it through, if it hasn't gone dry, is that you'll start lifting the actual rabbit fur from the pelt, and you'll start inducing bald patches. So So that's it. That's the waggy tail sculpin. Try these babies, and I'm going to tell you, you'll get the rod pulled out of your hand. You'll get the shock of your life. They grab them. So that's my advice. Do give the waggy tail sculpin a try. Sculpins in all streamers and baitfish patterns should be in every river fisherman's armoury.